news. Here in the UK, Sir Keir Starmer has been criticised by the Conservative Party for welcoming back to the UK a British Egyptian human rights campaigner after historical social media messages emerged, apparently showing him calling for Zionists to be killed. Alaa Abd al-Fattah came back to Britain on Friday after being released from prison in Egypt on a presidential pardon. Well, our chief political correspondent, Henry Zeffman, has been looking at how the government has been reacting to that criticism.
Politics loves a dramatic reversal, but even by Westminster standards, this one landed like a dropped point. One day, a return is welcomed with open arms. The next, senior Conservatives are demanding deportation. Same man, same government, entirely different tune. And once you follow the timeline, it's clear why this debate has exploded so quickly.
The government is taking quite a different tone, I have to say, to the tone it adopted when he arrived in the UK on Boxing Day. Back then, Sir Keir Starmer posted on X that he was delighted that Alaa Abd al-Fattah was in the UK, that his case had been a top priority for the government since it came to office. But pretty soon after, Sir Keir Starmer and other senior ministers posted similar messages online. People found a string of posts on social media from the Democracy.
The controversy begins with the return of Alaa Abd al-Fattah, a British Egyptian activist released from prison in Egypt and brought back to the UK after sustained diplomatic pressure. The government initially framed the moment as a moral success, stressing consular duty and years of lobbying. That framing mattered because it set expectations before the full picture emerged. But those expectations didn't last long. Within hours, historic social media posts resurfaced containing language many people found deeply troubling, including calls for violence. The tone of the national conversation shifted instantly. What had been a human rights narrative became a judgment call. People weren't asking about Egypt anymore. They were asking why this material hadn't been front and center beforehand. And that question only got louder.
The activists, which many people will find very troublesome, and you mentioned one of them there. The government is now saying that they weren't aware of these posts, that they condemn them and that they find them abhorrent. But I think probably before long, Christian, the onus is going to be on the government to make a more proactive argument for why they still believe that they owed this man consular services and fought so hard for his release in Egypt. The government is facing very severe criticism from the Conservatives today, in particular the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick, who is saying that Alaa Abd al-Fattah should be stripped of his British citizenship and deported back to Egypt. But successive Conservative governments, including governments in which Robert Jenrick himself served, also made this a major cause of their diplomacy with Egypt, Rishi Sunak raising it directly with President Sisi of Egypt. So I think that is obviously a difficult thing for them to grapple with when they're making that criticism of the government, but it definitely makes it easy for other party leaders, for example, Reform UK and Nigel Farage, who've been saying this, to question why either party ever campaigned for this man's release.
The government responded by condemning the posts, calling them abhorrent, and insisting officials were unaware of them at the time of his arrival. That explanation triggered skepticism. In politics, ignorance is rarely a comfort. When leaders say they didn't know, voters hear a lack of scrutiny. Either way, the optics turned sour fast. That opened the door wide. Conservatives moved quickly, with senior figures arguing Abd al-Fattah should be stripped of citizenship and deported. The demand was blunt, designed for impact, and it worked. The story hardened into a culture war flashpoint almost overnight. Yet that stance came with baggage of its own, because history doesn't reset. Successive Conservative governments had themselves pushed hard for Abd al-Fattah's release, raising his case directly with Egyptian leadership. That past support now complicates the outrage. Critics argue you can't champion someone for years, then disown them the moment controversy bites. It leaves the public wondering who actually believed what. And that doubt spreads. Reform UK figures seized on the confusion, questioning why both major parties ever backed his release. That intervention shifted the debate away from left versus right and toward elite consensus versus public trust. When voters sense all sides misjudge something, faith in leadership erodes. Which leads to the real issue. This row is no longer about one individual. It's about preparation, consistency, and credibility. Whether Abdel Fattah stays or goes, the damage lies in how poorly the decision was explained. When politics looks reactive rather than considered, confidence drains away. And once it's gone, it's devilishly hard to win back. Now it's over to you. Was this a failure of judgment, a failure of checks, or politics chasing its own tail? Share your view below. If you value straight, no-nonsense coverage, like the video, subscribe to Britain Voice, and stay tuned. This story isn't finished yet.